Hi friends, this is Anders Ibsen from Windermere Professional Partners, managing broker of Anders Ibsen Homes. Now, many of my clients over the last couple of months have asked me questions about what's been in the news recently, which is the recent National Association of Realtors settlement in the ongoing litigation about buyer-broker commissions. There are a lot of questions and misunderstandings about what this really means, and this is a snapshot in time. It's still an ongoing development. But I feel like it's really important to address what the actual facts are, just so people can be as informed as possible, even if the story is still taking shape. So the basic gist is that the basis of this litigation was that listing firms and buyer brokerage firms were colluding to artificially inflate commissions. And what it really comes down to is three things. The National Association of Realtors has agreed on multiple listing services, MLSs, that they own in various states to prohibit seller advertisement of buyer-broker commissions, to decouple commissions from listing firm to buyer firm, so to sever that relationship, and to move towards buyers having to have signed service agreements with their clients. Now, the reason why I'm really less concerned about this for Washington State is really simple, because we've already done some of these things already. As I pointed to in an earlier video, as early as 2022, the real estate community here in Washington State severed the tie between listing firm and buyer-broker firm when it comes to offering compensation to buyers' agents. And effectively what that means is the commission a buyer agent makes is now basically treated like a seller credit, where the seller offers compensation, not the listing firm. And then starting in early 2024, it's now the law that a buyer-broker has to have a written services agreement, which, among other things, spells out how much they're going to work for in commission. And effectively, buyer-broker compensation is now a closing cost that the seller can either pay the entirety of or some of as part of selling a house or offering to sell a house. And it's really not clear if the ban on sellers advertising buyer-broker compensation is going to apply to Washington State for one big reason, and that is, unlike most MLSs throughout the country, the Northwest Multiple Listing Service, which is where most listings get put here in Washington State, is independent. It's not National Association of Realtor owned, it's member owned. And so it's debatable if that ruling applies to us. We may or may not move in that direction, it's too early to tell, but we have more or less already done those other provisions. We've already decoupled listing firm and buyer firm from buyer broker compensation. It's now just a seller paid credit at closing, and buyers have to have signed service agreements with their agents already. That's already Washington State law. But all these legal developments notwithstanding, there's just basic questions people have as consumers. Like, if I'm trying to buy a house, do I still have my own agent? Am I responsible for paying the entirety of my broker's compensation on top of all this money I've saved up for my down payment and my closing costs? Will this affect home prices in any way? So basic questions like that. And my answer to that is it's too early to tell what, if anything, happens to things like prices or how this really shakes out legally here in Washington State. But overall, I am pretty confident in a couple of things. Regardless of whatever form the new system takes in the next year, and it's still an ongoing development, I still think that, for one, buyers are still going to have their own representation, their own agents, simply because they want them, because there is value in having an advocate negotiate on your behalf with a major six-figure transaction. Secondly, I don't think that the seller offer of compensation to buyer brokers, in whatever form that takes, I don't think that's going to go away completely. I think that there's definitely still room for that. And it's not because sellers are committed to paying other people or just want to give their money away, but it's because since it's now the law that buyers have to have signed service agreements with their agents, and if they want to have agents, period, it's not like they have the money to pay the entirety of buyer broker compensation. So unless sellers want to completely cut off a huge segment of the buyer pool for people who might consider buying their houses, then it's in the self-interest of sellers to continue to offer some compensation to buyer brokers in whatever form that looks like. But regardless of all these unknowns, like all these court cases that are happening, whether or not the Department of Justice entered the conversation and so forth, the fact remains that Washington State is pretty well insulated against this because of those reasons, because we've already taken steps to have a more transparent process for both buyers and sellers. And at the end of the day, while a lot of things are going to change, in some respects, nothing is changing at all, because there's always going to be a value in having professional representation for both buyers and sellers. And whatever form that takes, expanding transparency and just making people more aware of what they can negotiate about, it's fundamentally a good thing. So as this issue develops, I'll continue updating you with more objective information. But if you ever have any questions about what's going on with this ongoing litigation, the settlement, how this affects you, or just general market questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. This is Ibsen with Windermere Professional Partners. Thank you so much for watching my video, and hope you have a great day.